What I love about animation is you can do anything. So if you're going to draw something in modern day Burbank, you could also create it in 16th century China.
Whenever we pick a subject, it has to be in Africa or someplace, Harbin. Oh, we need to go there. And it's a great opportunity because we like to travel and see the world.
I want animation to take me someplace. I always try to put things in historical perspective. So 200 years ago, we were sitting around campfires, sharing stories. Now we live in an age where we share stories on screens.
Hi, Chris. Hi, Chuck.
Hi.
Thank you so much for joining me for my first time maskless in-person interview in 1 year.
Ours too.
My pleasure.
And we're going to talk about animation today. So exciting. Pixar's new animation film, Soul. It got released in theaters in China, actually got really well accepted and highly rated, especially this 2D design of this main character's afterlife. And also Jiang Ziya. It's a Chinese animation film hit after Ne Zha. People are falling in love with this 3-minute long 2D sequence in this movie. It caused a huge wave of discussion. So people are still loving 2D animation these days. And you guys, as the pioneers in the animation film industry, so you grew with this 2D animation industry to today's 3D animation era. How do you perceive people's obsession with 2D animation today over 3D animation?
Oh, it's crazy because the question 20 years ago was people are obsessed with 3D. So how do you feel about that? So yeah, our roots are in 2D traditional animation, and there's something very handcrafted, like you really feel the human touch. And CG is much more rich detail and is fascinating in its own way, but I find the computer is a little bit of a barrier. In order to talk to you, I've got to go through a device.
I think another thing too is for a while when CG was first introduced, the idea that they could get closer and closer to photorealism was the new challenge. So every film got more and more like details of leaves and grass and things. But the focus was on realism, and I think in 2D hand-drawn, the focus is on emotional stuff. Computers sometimes don't understand things like a motion blur, which feels like a mistake to a computer, but to our eyes, when we see it, we accept it as movement.
So there's a thing called squash and stretch in animation. So sometimes things get really exaggerated. And that's very hard for a computer to do, very easy for a hand-drawn artist to do. So you're kind of fighting the tools. Like when I throw my arm like I'm throwing a baseball, my arm is the same, and that's what the computer thinks. In 2D animation, that might be a drawing with my hand stretched out to give you the feel at 24 frames a second of my hand whipping, a baseball forward. But in reality, it doesn't do that. It actually moves through it. So you have to trick the computer sometimes. It's harder to get it to look less real.
I actually have a very interesting question for you too. So Chris, you produced beloved 101 Dalmatians, right. And Chuck, you were in development of so many Aladdin, Beauty and Beast, Little Mermaid, Lion King. All of these are great 2D animation films. So how would you feel when one day all of these films are remade into 3D?
Well, the Disney ones you mentioned are being made into, look at something like Jungle Book or Lion King, that's basically CG animation. The Lion King, it's all computer animation, just made to look realistic. I think stories they're generational, and stories get passed on in different ways. And the great thing about universal stories that go beyond one culture into the rest of the world is I think they should be told and retold. I'm excited to see something done in a different way.
You never know. Maybe one day they'll do a 2D hand-drawn version of Shrek, which was the first CG movie. Things run in cycles. Maybe one day 2D hand-drawn will be, oh, it's so great. Have you seen it? You know, because CG was new. And the thing about when CG came out, when Shrek came out, it was the first time people had seen a computer animation hold up for a whole movie and really work, you know, and it blew people's minds. So for a while there, just the technology was what brought the audience in. But technology isn't enough. It has to also be appealing characters and a good story. And now you can really bring the audience in. So, you know, I think things come and go in cycles. I think there's a new growing appreciation for 2D and hand-drawn.
So Soul is such a popular animation film. Do you see Soul winning this year? Do you have any prediction?
I think so. Wolf Walkers is terrific and Over the Moon, but it's also how the Academy is staffed, like the people that are members of the animation branch. And there's a lot of Pixar and Disney people there, and they tend to vote for things that they enjoy and they like working on. So
let me write it down. Chuck predicted.
hey, I go to those parties where we predict the winners, and I'm usually top 3.
Wow. How about Chris?
I think Soul has a very good chance of winning also because it's a high concept, so it has its real challenges. It has the first African-American protagonist in a movie from Pixar and Disney, which is great. Wolfwalkers is a brilliant movie, but Wolfwalkers is kind of more in a limited way, maybe because of their budget. They don't have to do a global appeal, so they can do a more specific target audience. And I think it skews a little older, more like adults. It's more about mythology related to Ireland in the middle, the kingdoms of the United Kingdom. Soul is a 4-quadrant family movie, you know, and it has to have more global appeal.
And I love, as Chris was saying, that in Ireland, they're trying to tell a universal story, but it's very specific to their culture. When I started in the 80s, Disney was like the only real big feature animated film game in town. And the movies start to feel a little bit the same. Now we got all these different voices coming in from Ireland, from China, from Japan. We're seeing a lot more anime. I think it just makes the industry that much more richer and interesting to watch. And that's how we'll get diversity in subject matter in films.
Correct me if I'm wrong. So we're always hearing in the live action movie field, people are saying, we need more diversity, we need more foreign stories, we need more people of color in our movies. But think about animation films, like way back then, the films that you guys created. Like all of these movies are already about different cultures. So we have Aladdin, we have Mulan, Pocahontas, and Chris, you created Legend of Secret Past in 2010, which is about an American Indian boy's journey. Chuck, not to mention you worked on so many Asian IPs. And one of your upcoming projects is about Journey to the West, which is a very famous Chinese legend. So I'm really curious to know, what is the drive behind all these? What makes animation people seek for foreign stories or stories in different cultures more?
We like to find different settings, which then allows us to dive into the culture and find new ideas to sort of help spread culture. Just because it makes the film feel more rich and enjoyable to the audience. And we hope that they leave after seeing the movie feeling like they learned something about Day of the Dead in Coco. You know, they know about Day of the Dead because it's in a Mexican restaurant, but they didn't maybe know that ancestors could disappear if they aren't honored. You know, little things that come from research. So we look at it as an opportunity. Whenever we pick a subject, it has to be in Africa or someplace, Harbin. Oh, we need to go there. And it's a great opportunity because we like to travel and see the world.
What I love about animation is you can do anything. It's a blank canvas and whatever your imagination can create. So if you're going to draw something in modern day Burbank, you could also create it in 16th century China. So we have the choice of going anywhere we want for the same budget. So, but if you're going to set something and we're going to set it in Africa and you got to bring a crew there and actors, it can be very expensive. But to draw it, or to train lions, how do you to do that? So, but you can draw it, you can draw anything. I want animation to take me someplace. I want it to be somewhere that I can't go to in a normal world. So we can go over the moon in that little girl's imagination, or we can go to a stylized Ireland in the Middle Ages, and that's, to do that in live action, it's a different feat.
So, as American filmmakers who were born and raised in the US, and when you were creating content for the Chinese audience, how do you approach this completely different audience group, different culture, different market? What are some obstacles and how do you overcome them?
We look at China as an emerging market in the film business from a Western point of view. We also look at the maturity of the industry and feel like the United States has a very mature film industry. So this led to some early mistakes. People from Hollywood said, let's go to China and we'll make a movie together. But the attitude was, we're going to tell you how it's done. And that results in failure almost every time. So what needs to happen, I've learned over time, is you need to go there and say, here's how we do it. How do you do it? And why? And then we exchange ideas to try to find something that we think can work in both. Yeah, it's really, really difficult.
The other thing is American audiences are actually very logical. They want their story logic, plot logic, there's character logic, there's world logic. I find actually in a lot of foreign places, in France, in Japan, and in China, they're much more accepting.
One example, we were brought in to help structure a story for a movie. So I kept talking about structure. Act 1, Act 2, midpoint, inciting incident, all of Dark Night of the Soul, all these things that we know of. And also, these are things that Western audiences expect to see. And so I kept talking about it, and finally the writer said, you know, you guys are obsessed with structure. He said, in America, all you think of is structure. You know, from our perspective, we just start writing. It's kind of like a river, and it hits some rocks, and then it goes this way, and it comes back this way. More free-flowing thoughts. You have to understand what the audience expects. So it's not a matter of finding a story that has Chinese characters and elements told by Western story teamed together. It's not going to guarantee you success. You really need to understand what audiences are used to seeing. I just wanted to this part of my story. The owners of Elfie came in. They were here at a meeting called Decon, which is like Comic-Con, but it's for designers. And they were here with Elfie, and they came and saw me. And when I looked at Elfie, I said, wow, this definitely will have appeal to a Chinese audience. It's got a little bit like Hello Kitty kind of feeling to it, you know. What we're doing is bringing in some Western writers and designers from China, the creators from Thailand. This particular Elfie has been very successful in China already and licensed some merchandising with Bilibili. There's an awareness of Elfie, and the story really about Elfie is, on Elfie Island, grandmother Elfie has a newspaper, which is not doing well because people don't buy newspapers anymore. And so her grandson, who's Elfie has like a YouTube channel, and he's making videos and putting it up. So they decide, wait, you can go to England where they have a cheese rolling contest, and you can film it and send it back to Granny, and she'll make a story in the Elfie News, and Elfie will put it on his YouTube channel. So that's really the concept. Basically, we're going to go all over the world. We're going to Harbin Ice Festival, and we're going to talk about it. We're going to film it for the YouTube channel. So I love the idea that it's, you know, we talked about culture and travel. This is a whole show about that.
That's all the places they're going to go?
Yeah, we're going to go over the whole world. They go to Thailand for a tut-tut race. All kinds of fun adventures, you know. So yeah, there's the Terracotta Warrior. I feel like maybe with a little luck, this one will be the one we can actually have east-west success. Yay. In our experience, we've been asked to come over and help structure or design and help try to bring some of our knowledge on to making films. And that's evolved now to, can we also help mentor or help create a curriculum for students who love animation or storytelling. When we were in Hangzhou, we met with Mr. Wu of Zhejiang University. We've continued to talk about creating a curriculum of animation masters to come over, or just mentors to come over and teach on many things such as, you know, storytelling and design. And I'm more involved with helping recruit like Carter Goodridge or Pete DeSav, who are great character designers. And he did Coco and brought Chuck in actually, and through some of the people Chuck's working with as well, is to sort of find a way we can bring our experience into a format that Mr. Wu can then use in a curriculum.
we're talking about, I have a course, a 7-hour course on story development, which is the main thing I do, is how do you take an idea, an IP, and come up with an interesting story around that idea or character or world or setting, whatever it is. How do you develop it into something that can become a movie? And I also teach a course on pitching stories, how to convey your ideas to get money and to get distribution, things like that. And it's so important for the generation we're in now. Like, to me, it's a shame that Miyazaki, who's retiring in Japan, but he doesn't teach. Yeah, I don't know if it's him or it's not so much in the culture. Maybe there's not that many opportunities, but he's a master. You want to capture whatever he can convey. Some people aren't as comfortable talking about it, they just feel it. I've met him a few times, he's very articulate. Passing on that knowledge, I think there's a responsibility, and we've been at this for more than 30 years each, and I'm looking forward to passing on what we know and then seeing what new voices can rise out of that. There's certain rules around filmmaking that you should know before you break them, and then you can make it unique to your own experience.
A lot of people actually put in a lot of effort in this co-production, cooperating between Chinese film industry and Hollywood. On both sides have been trying different things in many different ways, trying to approach each other. So you guys are at the front line of this. From the bottom of your heart, other than obviously the growing markets, more box office, what other benefits actually come out of this cooperation?
Telling diverse stories, as we've been talking about. When you do the collaboration, whether it's creatively with animators and actors, you get a different, read or a different way to express an idea than, say, a Western audience would. And then from a business perspective, people put money in and they want what they know to be familiar. So I think we're able to create projects that are more universal. The Monkey King project I'm working on now with Toei Animation is based on a very famous, as you know, Chinese legend. Probably the 3 biggest film markets in the world. It's the US, working on the story, a Chinese great old legend executed in an anime Japanese studio, Toei Animation of Japan. One of their most famous properties, Dragon Ball Z. So about 5 years ago, they came and said, hey, we want to adapt Journey to the West and the story of the Monkey King into a futuristic tale, but be a little bit more true to the original. And this is our Mini-Mite, and Coco, that's for you.
Oh, thank you. 谢谢.
So we learned, I've got lots of books of learning about the Monkey King. So that's, as we were saying earlier, you dive into the research first. And you find out who he was and what he meant and the politics, the truths about it, why audiences like it. You start diving in and trying to create a story that you think could work in the West, but also honors the traditions of the East.
Who is your favorite character in Journey to the West, other than Monkey King?
Well, I like the pig character. He's funny, but he's also base, and even though people like that, wine, women, and song, it's the basic sort of things. But he rang very true to me. The Monkey King is such a specific character in Asian culture. In our story, he's such a reckless sort of playboy kind of guy. The ring sort of represents a commitment to this little girl and her brother who are trying to find their parents. And in a way, it's sort of like young men suddenly becoming fathers. So the way you put on a wedding ring, a gold ring around your finger, sort of similar to putting this on, and representing that you're giving away your freedom for something greater. There's no romantic, it's not a real family, but it's a sort of a family of misfits. And he has this responsibility, and the ring reminds him of his responsibility to this little girl and her brother, just like if you're married and have kids, the same way a ring around your finger reminds you of it.
We mentioned that you guys did a lot of amazing 2D animation films like back then, and these are the films that I grew up watching. Do your kids watch these movies with you at home, and do they believe these are my father's work?
Well, I have a 10-year-old, and he likes to think that it's really cool that I work on cartoons, for sure. On the Netflix project we're currently working on, he's seeing it from designs to animatics, now seeing animation. So he's watching it progress. Wow. And he's excited about that, yeah. Wow. So, and I like to say, watch the show with me and what do you think? Because I get a 10-year-old's opinion.
My kids were born my first year at Disney, and my son's 29 now. So he grew up in it, going to the studio, going to parties, going to premieres, and my daughter did as well. So, and we lived 10 minutes from Magic Kingdom. We lived on Disney property in Celebration, and we would just get in the car and go to Epcot for dinner.
Living in a fantasy world.
Yeah. What is the last film you watched with your kids?
We saw Coco together, and we love it, and it's all about family. And what I did was, after watching that movie, I took a bunch of photographs of my grandparents that my kids, that are now passed on, but my kids barely knew. And I took some old frames and I spray painted them black, and I decorated them like Day of the Dead in bright colors. And now every Halloween we bring out all those photos of our family because that movie inspired it. And we tell stories about our ancestors and what they were like as our grandparents, and try to keep them alive through storytelling. You know, this camera here is my grandfather's.
Wow.
And I have his projector at home. This is from the 1950s. This is the camera. It still works, but I haven't put film in it. But I have the projector version, which is this big. Wow. And you know that you shoot it on this and you project it. And it's this old piece of industrial, all metal and mechanical, and then huge speakers. So it's amazing to me to think that a huge projector now can be that big with
You almost
speakers.
can carry it anywhere.
Yeah, and you just plug it in, and from the old technology to new
The
technology.
projector made a lot of noise.
Oh yeah, they were very loud. Well, that's how I got into filmmaking, is in the 70s. My grandfather was from California, and he'd drive across the country, and he would show us his films. And he would bring a projector into our living room, set up an old clunky machine, and run film, and the film would break in the middle of it. But the whole family would gather around, and it was all home videos. And he would cut them to music like Camp Granada, that old Ben Sherman song. Yeah. This is, 40 years ago. And I saw how it was done. And this is how I got into filmmaking.
It looks a little bit like Mickey Mouse from the same.
It does look like Mickey Mouse.
I think we really need more people who make great animation films today, because animation films, it isn't just for kids. It's for, like what Chuck said, it brings family together. And it would be really great to watch animation film at home with the kids, right?
Yeah, animation, particularly the animation of the U.S., is so family oriented. John Lasseter, who ran Pixar, would always talk about, you want to be able to sit next to your 4-year-old kid or your 80-year-old grandmother, and you want everybody to enjoy it. So that's how we would approach these, now they call it co-viewing, but parents and children and even grandparents can all sit around and share a story. I always try to put things in historical perspective. So 200 years ago, we were sitting around campfires, sharing stories, you know, telling about the adventure somebody had of the day or something from their childhood that they remember. Now we live in an age where we share stories on screens. And what better way to do it with your family than with a projector at home?
I mean, if we had the room and we could put this up in a house and have a big screen, sit around and watch it, it's pretty cool that it just sits on a table nearby. And I guess if the kids are going to bump into it, it's nice that it fixes itself automatically. Yeah. Pretty cool.
I'm wondering, so for animation filmmakers, does it matter if your work is being played on a bigger screen?
Maybe it's our ego, but we always like the full attention and be able to see the rich detail. So I've always enjoyed the theater experience, and now this last year has taught us we can, especially with good quality projectors, we can have that experience at home. You put so much work into these things. The Brother Bear film I made was 6 years of work from concept to screen. So you want the audience to be able to experience all of that and appreciate it. And the bigger it is on screen, the better.
Sure. Thank you so much.